Hello, this is Alexander. This is the first of many videos which I will be creating on this political channel, analyzing and, discussing and making predictions about politics. Today I am doing a 2022 Senate prediction based off the data that we currently have. And this year is an incredibly important year for the Democratic Party to pick up seats, considering that in the 2024 Senate election, you have a Democrat senator in West Virginia, a state that went to Trump by over 60 points, I believe. You have a Democratic senator in Ohio up for re-election, and you have a Democratic senator in Montana up for re-election. Now, all of these were Trump states, and these are all states that did not go for Joe Biden in 2020. Montana, Ohio, and West Virginia, three Republican states, opting to elect Democratic Senators Jon Tester, Sherrod Brown, and Joe Manchin, respectively, allow Democrats to currently hold the Senate majority. Keep in mind that without those three red state Democrat senators, the GOP would hold the Senate majority and Mitch McConnell would be the majority leader of the Senate. The trajectory that the Democratic Party is on, getting worse and worse margins with rural voters, while getting better margins with college-educated urban voters, is not a good trajectory for a party that wants to keep the Senate, hold the Senate, or gain the Senate. Which is why I personally believe that as the decade continues, unless something dramatically changes, Republicans are favored to win the Senate within the next few cycles. But now, on to the 2022 cycle. So first we have the standard safe states for a Republican Party. You're going to have Idaho, Utah, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, and Kentucky. Now, we would all love for Kansas to, be a Democrat state, but it simply isn't. And Utah has, over the past decade or so, been shifting more and more to the left, and that is the current trend there, but it is still a safe Republican stronghold. If you look at the 2020 election results in Utah, you can see that Trump won Utah by over 15 points, and if you look in 2016, he won it by over 20 points. So yes, while that is a very big shift in favor of the Democrats, it is not enough of a shift to make Democrats competitive in Utah in the upcoming 2022 election cycles, especially as Joe Biden is extremely unpopular, and you can see that the disapproval rating is slightly ticking downwards. That is due to the price of oil dropping, but ever since really, August 27th, August 26th here, Biden approval rating has steadily been dropping downwards, and the reason for that is simple. Over the first 2 years of an incumbent presidency, the first midterm after a president first gets elected, that's generally the midterm where the opposing party wins. And that's due to the fact that the president usually is unpopular. Now back to the map here. I'm going to say that Washington, Oregon, California, Illinois, Maryland, New York, Vermont, Connecticut, and Hawaii are all safe states for the Democratic Party. Now, as you can see here, the Democratic Party does have an advantage in the amount of... Oh, wait a second. I forgot about Alaska. Now, as you can see here, the Democratic Party is currently favored with the amount of states that are safe for them. However, the swing states are what make or breaks any elections. So let's talk about the swing states. In Nevada, you have Catherine Cortez Masto going up against whichever candidate wins the Republican primary for this state. Now, Nevada has slowly but surely, by very, very small margins in each election, been trending red over the past, 6 years or so. So, although there is that Republican trend, I'm going to go ahead and say that this state right here, it's a tilt Democrat state. And now, before I forget again, I do apologize, but I forgot about Indiana and Colorado. Indiana is a safe Republican seat, in my opinion, and Colorado is quite the opposite. It's a safe Democratic seat, in my opinion. Now, moving on to Arizona, you have the incumbent senator, Mr. Mark Kelly, going up against whoever wins the Republican primary. Now, there is a wide array of candidates in the Republican Party, and notable one of these is Blake Masters. He is from Tucson, and he is regarded by many to be a far-right American First individual. Now, given the current state of the Republican Party, this guy has a great chance of winning. If he wins the primary, the Republican Party, and I cannot stress this enough, is screwed in Arizona. And I think he is going to win the primary. And even if he doesn't, Mark Kelly is an astronaut. He has a great story. He does have progressive policies, which means that he is not the most favored individual to win in a swing state like Arizona. But in my opinion, I think he is going to pull ahead and he's going to win in 2022. So I'm making this another tilt state. And just so you guys know, my tilt characterizations are generally 3 points or less. So the Democratic Party would win both of these seats by 3 points or less. Now, moving on to Iowa, you have the incumbent senator, Mr. Chuck Grassley, who has been in politics for over 68 years. He is, without a doubt, going to beat his primary opponent. And you have a field of Democratic candidates who are going against each other in the primary. No matter which Democrat wins the 2022 Democratic primary for the 2022 United States Senate election in Iowa, I think it's a safe bet to say that Mr. Grassley wins this seat. Now, while he has not always been the most popular candidate, he wins in landslides. There's no doubt about it. He won in 2016 by over 60%. He won in 2010 by over 60%. He won in 2004 by over 60%. In 1998 by over 60%. And in 1992 by over 60%, and in 1986 by over 60%. And the point I'm getting at here is that every single election he has been done for the Senate, he has never been below 60%, and he has never lost an election for any position in politics. So I think it's a safe bet to say that although Iowa is usually characterized as a swing state, I think it's a safe bet to say that Iowa is a Republican stronghold in the 2022 Senate elections. Moving on to Missouri, you have a really interesting race in Missouri because you have former Governor Eric Greitens, right, going against other primary candidates. And if former Governor Eric Greitens wins in the GOP primary for this race, that's going to automatically up the margin of the Democratic candidate in this race in a state which is a usually Republican state by multiple points. Because here's the thing. Mr. Greitens resigned in shame from the governorship due to numerous sexual assault allegations. And I personally feel that if he was the candidate, which he will likely be, it's not going to go well for the Republican Party in Missouri. If you go back to 2016, you had Roy Bourne, the incumbent senator, going up against Jason Kander, a very charismatic candidate. Kander was able to significantly narrow the margin in favor of the Democratic Party. However, he was not able to win. What this shows here, right, even previously, the margins here, what they show is that Missouri is open to electing senators from other parties, and it still is. And I feel that if Mr. Lucas Kunz ends up winning the Democratic primary. He is a populist Democrat. There was recently an article about him in Politico. I feel that if he won the Democratic primary, he would have a very good shot at winning. Now, it's a long shot, and he probably won't win, but he has a good shot at doing so. But for now, until we get those primaries results in, I am going to have to give Missouri the lean characterization for the Republican Party. Now, in Wisconsin, the Badger State, the race is a bit murky. You see, incumbent Senator Ron Johnson has yet to declare whether or not he will seek re-election. He's previously stated that he intended to only serve 2 terms. However, he has yet to confirm or deny a re-election bid. If he chose not to run for re-election, the race would turn into an open race, and the Republican Party would lose any potential incumbency advantage that they may have had. So in this prediction, I am going to presume that the Republican nominee to the seat will indeed be Mr. Johnson, even though he has not yet confirmed a re-election bid. One thing that is important to note about Mr. Johnson is that he has previously gone viral many times for spreading what some call COVID misinformation. In fact, many of the Senate hearings that he's held have questioned the actions of the CDC and Mr. Fauci. He's repeatedly attacked government health officials and other health experts on social media and other places. So understandably, this could be a turnoff for some voters, especially those in better educated states. However, this is Wisconsin we're talking about here, and Mr. Johnson, being the sort of far-right person that he is, could help make his base turn out in higher numbers for him, and it can convince some folks who are tired of government COVID restrictions to vote for him. However, Wisconsin is a swing state, albeit a Republican trending one. In 2010, Mr. Johnson only won his race by 4 points, and in 2016 he won by less than 4 points. 2022 is likely to be a Republican-leaning year, similar to 2010, 2014, and 1994, and therefore I can confidently project that Mr. Johnson will win his seat by 4 points or more. The presumptive nominee on the Democratic side, Mr. Mandela Barnes, the lieutenant governor of Wisconsin, is very progressive, though it is important to note that both candidates have a track record of winning in this swing state. However, again, seeing as it is likely to be a Republican-leaning year in 2022, I am going to be giving Wisconsin the lean rating for the Republican Party. I believe that the Republican Party will win this seat by a lean margin of about 4 points. In Florida, the race is relatively straightforward. You have the incumbent Republican Senator Mark Rubio running for re-election. This would be his 3rd term as senator if re-elected. Now, of course, Florida is traditionally considered a swing state, so you have many prominent Democratic politicians throwing their hat in the ring. A notable absence here is former Governor Charlie Crist, who enjoys running in every dang statewide election in Florida, or at least it feels like he does. Mr. Crist is currently running for governor of Florida, though he did run for this Senate seat and lost in 1998 as a Republican, and he ran for this seat and lost again in 2010 as an independent. However, one important thing to note is that the fact that he garnered over 20% of the statewide vote here as an independent in 2010 goes to show just how much influence Mr. Crist has in Florida politics. In fact, he got over 30%. This is an incredibly great showing for an independent candidate, considering how rare it is that an independent candidate would get a good margin in a Senate race. Now, one of the most influential candidates in the Democratic primary here is Representative Val Demings. In this video, I'll be treating Ms. Demings as the presumptive nominee for this seat, although something could happen that causes her to lose the primary. It's important to note that she's currently the frontrunner. For a Republican, Mr. Rubio is very popular in the Cuban and Hispanic Floridian communities. Ms. Demings is an African-American woman who is chief of the Orlando Police Department, so I'd assume that any attacks on Ms. Demings about Democrats not being tough on crime would have little to no effect. From what I can tell, she's a moderate to center-left candidate and certainly isn't a progressive candidate. Although Florida is considered a traditional swing state, the fact is that Florida is trending right and isn't very favorable for Democrats. I feel Mr. Rubio will be able to win where he needs to and rack up the margins in places like Miami-Dade County, although he won't outright win Miami-Dade County. And given that 2022 is a likely lean GOP year, I'm going to be rating Florida as likely GOP and projecting that Mr. Rubio will win this seat by 7 points or more. One last thing before we move on. I rated Alaska as safe GOP, since Lisa Murkowski is an incredibly popular, moderate candidate who won by over 20% in 2016. Now, moving on to Ohio. You have the incumbent senator, Mr. Portman, saying that he would not seek re-election to his seat, and that means it is an open race. Now, it is important to note, before I continue discussing this, that the Democrats currently have a senator from Ohio. His name is Sherrod Brown. He is a left-leaning senator, and he is one of the two senators from Ohio. The other is a Republican. Now, due to the current state of the Republican Party, similar to Arizona, you have the former state treasurer, Mr. Josh Mandel, who is notably far-right, as it says right here, an American far-right politician, going up against Mr. J.D. Vance, who is another far-right individual. And then you have these other three folks and a whole list of other candidates. Now, these two are the front-runners, and personally, I think Josh Mandel is going to be the presumptive nominee for Republican Party in the Ohio Senate race. Now, moving on to the Democratic Party, you have Representative Tim Ryan, who is most likely, I'm just going to say he's the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party in Ohio. Now, if Tim Ryan and Josh Mandel are the nominees, I have to say that I think Ohio is going to be a tilt Democratic seat. And the reason for this is due to the fact that there is already a Democratic senator from Ohio, and Josh Mandel is just so far right that I don't know if he can win Ohio. I really don't. And you know what? I might be a bit bullish on this, but I can say pretty confidently that I think that Mr. Tim Ryan is going to eke out a victory in Ohio. Now, moving on to New Hampshire, you had the Republican governor, Chris Sununu, say that he is not going to run for Senate in New Hampshire. Now, he is a popular governor in a state that generally votes Democrat, and he is Republican, so that gave many Republicans hope that they could, if he would run for Senate, that they could win. The incumbent senator, Mrs. Hanson, is pretty popular, and I personally think that she is going to win re-election here, and that's why I'm giving her a lean Democrat characterization. Now, moving on to Pennsylvania, you have the incumbent two-term Republican senator saying that he's not going to run for re-election to a third term and saying that he's going to plan to go back into the private sector. Now, that probably means lobbying. We all know the revolving door that is lobbying in Washington. Politicians, they go through that door, they become a politician, they go back through that door, they become a lobbyist, back and forth and back and forth. It's a never-ending cycle. That is part of our corrupt Washington, D.C. Now, here, we have the Republican primary. You have the 6, I'm sure they're very lovely people. I know absolutely nothing about them. And you have Mehmet Oz, who looks like they could be potentially a candidate in the Republican primary, and you had Sean Parnell, who was a candidate in the Republican primary. However, Sean Parnell dropped out due to him losing custody of his children in a heated court battle. So, if Mehmet Oz wins, you're going to have a TV reality star. If Mehmet Oz wins the primary, you're going to have a reality TV star go against the Democratic candidate. And now you have many great Democrat candidates in the Democratic primary for Pennsylvania. You know, I mean, clearly the Democrats have a deep bench in Pennsylvania. You have the Lieutenant Governor, John Fetterman, very popular man, very working class man. He's able to connect with the working class very well. And you have the Representative Conor Lamb. Now, personally, I think Conor Lamb is going to win the primary. I hope he wins the primary. But if John Fetterman wins the primary, that's good too. You know, so, you know what, either one, I think honestly, either one could win in Pennsylvania. Although I think John Fetterman may have a better shot at winning. Although I'm not so sure that Fetterman could get the margins which are needed. And honestly, I just think that Connor Lamb has a better shot at winning than Fetterman. And due to that, if it is a Lamb versus Oz race, I would have to give Pennsylvania not a lean, but certainly a tilt Democrat margin, right? So already you can see the Democrats at 51, they're winning. Now that brings us to, of course, Georgia. You have incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock, who won in a runoff election last year, who is a black male, and he's gonna definitely win the Democratic primary. I have no doubt about it. Going up against, most likely, another black guy, Herschel Walker, who is a Republican candidate in the Republican primary. Now, assuming that Herschel Walker is the presumptive nominee going up against Raphael Warnock, I'm going to give Georgia a lean Democratic rating. Now, I give Georgia this rating due to the fact that Georgia is rapidly going to the left wing. Their population is growing fast, particularly their black population. And it's evident, really, that they are going to be a Democratic state going forward, most likely. Now, they're still a swing state, of course. I'm a bit bullish on this, but I'm going to say Mr. Warnock wins in Georgia. Now, actually, I'm going to revise my prediction on this. I think it's more a tilt, just due to the fact that the Republican candidate being a black person could shift some of the black vote in Georgia to the Republican Party. Now, moving on to North Carolina and South Carolina. In North Carolina, you have the incumbent senator, Mr. Richard Burr, seeing that he would not seek re-election in 2022, and he hasn't been a candidate. In the Republican primary, you have 5 different declared candidates, apparently, and I'll be honest, I don't know much about these, although just looking off the, resumes here, I'd say that Pat McCrory, not only endorsed by the former senator, former governor of North Carolina, probably has a definite shot at becoming the nominee. Now, for the Republican Party. Now, moving on to the Democratic Party nominee, you have these 6 folks, and I'll be real, I don't know much about these folks either. So for me, when I'm looking at this, it's really a generic Democrat going up against a generic Republican, and I'm going to say that given that North Carolina is generally a Republican state, and Republicans generally win there by margins a bit over 2 points, that it is going to be a tilt Republican Senate seat. Well, senator who becomes state. So now, last but not least, moving on to South Carolina. You have the incumbent Senator Tim Scott declaring his re-election campaign. He is going to win the primary, without a doubt. And in the Democratic primary, you have 2 people that I have never heard of. Of course, in any election, you need sacrifice candidates. One of these 2 lovely folks is going to become the sacrifice candidate. And you know why that is? Because South Carolina has not elected a Democratic senator in so many years. They're such a Republican lean seat. And while the Sun Belt, the general South Sun Belt, is reverting its trend of sadly moving away from the Democratic Party and becoming Republican, that's not going to happen in South Carolina for quite a few decades, if you know what I'm saying. So South Carolina, honestly, I'm giving it a likely margin. And that is going to conclude my Senate prediction video for 2022. Now, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon to be notified about any future videos that I produce. And, of course, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Alright, peace out.